Now, once you've posted each of those entries to your general ledger, you should have 3 entries in the general ledger account for profit and loss on disposal of fixed assets. Does this look right? Okay. Now, you had a debit. This was for removing the furniture. You had a credit for the cash we received and a credit for the $1,050 depreciation that we eliminated. And the total now of this account, we got $2,100 in debits. We've got $1,550 in credits. So what's the balance of this account? $550, debit or credit? Debit. Okay, so the balance is $550. Profit and loss on disposal of fixed assets is an earnings account. It falls below the expenses. It is included in calculating our profit or our loss. Now, when you have a debit balance in the profit and loss accounts, what does that do to earnings? It decreases it. What did we say at the beginning? We said that we expected a loss out of this, didn't we? Well, we got it. And our books reflected it by breaking it down 3 ways. We didn't even have to calculate it. It came up itself, okay? So this is a loss. Now, it took 3 entries to get us there, but it showed us what the loss was. Let's change the story a little bit here. Let's just consider the fact that what if instead of giving us 500, Jim Smith gave us 1,500? Well, the first part would be different, wouldn't it? Okay? Instead of 500, it would have been a $1,500 credit. Would the second part have been the same? Would the third part have been the same? Yeah, it wouldn't impact the depreciation, so those 2 parts would have been the same. But now when we total it up, we have $2,550 in credits, $2,100 in debits. So what's the result to our account now? $450 credit, which is a profit. Okay? Let's change the scenario again. Let's say that instead of selling it at all, we just took it down to the landfill and dropped it off the back of a truck. Okay? Now, what would have been different about the entry then? What about part number 1? It's gone. What would we have done on part number 1? To record the asset received. We didn't receive anything, right? So there was nothing to record. That would not have existed. What about part number 2? Still would have had it, right? Would have had $2,100 debit. And what about part number 3? Still had it. So now we total up this account. Got $1,050 in credits, a $2,100 in debits. What's the account balance? $1,050 debit or credit? Debit. And what is that? Loss. And in reality, that's the case, isn't it? By taking it down the landfill, we took a loss of $1,050, which was the book value of that item. Okay? So, this process works, doesn't it? Okay? And that's the way we do it. Now, for small businesses, we're usually talking about relatively few items. There might only be 1, 2, or 10 items on there. If you present the list to the owner of the business, they will typically be able to look at it very quickly, scan it, and tell you if they've got the stuff or not. This doesn't require you to go in and check their numbers or to see if it's there. They don't have to prove it to you. You simply, and typically I will do that in November or December time frame. See, if I were an employee, I'd probably know if something left, right? I might have actually seen it go out the front door. But if I'm a freelancer, I probably wasn't there, so I give the list to them November, December, maybe even October, and I say, do you still have all this stuff? And they'll look at it very quickly and just cross out what they don't have. Then I ask them, well, what happened to it? And if they took it down to the landfill, that's going to impact the entry just like we've done here. If they sold it, I'm going to ask them, well, why didn't I know about the money? Where'd you put the money? And if he says, well, I put it in my pocket and it's a proprietorship, what was that? Owner's draw, okay? And so instead of debiting cash, I am going to debit owner's draw for that amount. Do you follow? Okay? So that's the process. And it's a good idea just to know where this page is, because 6 months from now, when you need to use it, you're not going to remember I talked about it up here, I'm afraid. So at that point, you just turn to that page. It will be there. You'll remember we talked about it. You just might not remember all the accounts, okay? So just be aware that they're there.